Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest, Denise Winkel, and I'm so excited to have her on the show today. She's actually a colleague and a counselor, and I'll let you, Denise, talk about yourself in just a minute, but I did want to say that Denise is amazing. She is so happy and just like vibrant energy and has been so much fun from the time I very first met you. And Denise, I was actually trying to remember where that was. Wasn't it at a training that we did together?
Yes. Yeah, it was because we had a friend in common and we were both doing that training. Yeah.
What was it for? Was it a trauma training?
I thought it was emotionally focused therapy.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. Yeah. Anyway, so it's been wonderful ever since. We've kept in contact and I've sent her, hopefully you've received them, but several referrals. She's just a great counselor in the area. So I keep sending them your way. And I'm excited to have you as a guest. So do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, Denise?
Absolutely. Yeah. I am so happy to be here too. I was really excited when you asked me to come on. So yeah, Denise Winkel. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon. I live in Idaho and have 5 children. I am a counselor, a licensed professional counselor. I work a lot with trauma, but also with marriage. I love marriage and family stuff. So that's the thing that excites me in life. And I direct a choir. I love music. I love chocolate. There's lots of things that I love to hang with friends. I love people. So I'm grateful to be able to be a part of the counseling community.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. And I love that you did tell me that you love talking about couples too. I'd done some episodes recently, so I thought we'd try your other passion, but maybe we'll have to have you back on to talk about that in the future if you're okay with it.
Yeah, I love it.
Maybe you'll want to see how this one goes first before you agree to that. Maybe you're like, no way.
Sorry, Kendra. No.
Not happening. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important, unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Well, yeah, if you don't mind, I'd love to just jump in and get your input on some things to help with our listeners. And one thing that you spoke to that you're really excited to talk about, you're really passionate about, is something that I feel like you cannot speak enough on, and that is self-compassion. And I'm wondering if you could just briefly tell us why that's a passion of yours and why you think it's so important for listeners to learn about.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Like it really helps with all aspects of your life, but is it okay if I kind of define self-compassion?
Oh, please do.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'll kind of give you my little spiel. So, let's start with compassion, right? So compassion is the ability to suffer with, and it's also an ability to feel for, it's an ability to kind of slow down and act with kindness and understanding and be able to sit in someone else's shoes. Now, if you kind of direct that towards yourself, right, that's self-compassion. And that is such a foreign concept to people of what I'm going to direct that compassion towards myself. But it's such a helpful concept. And there's actually 3 parts of self-compassion. So the first part is an awareness of your own suffering and validating that. Another part is to normalize that you're human and you make mistakes and you're learning and growing. And the third part is supportive self-talk. We talk a lot in the counseling community about positive self-talk, but I like the term supportive self-talk, that you're supporting yourself through this.
I love that you broke it down for us because those are such key steps, those three things. So you said awareness, normalize, and then that's supportive self-talk, right?
Yes. Yeah. And with the awareness, you want to make sure you're validating what you're going through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's elements of all of those that I love, especially in acceptance and commitment therapy too, that I enjoy. Awesome. Well, thank you for giving us a little synopsis. So specifically, like when did you get really passionate about that? It sounds like you teach this a lot to your clients. Yeah. Is there any more background on that you can share with us?
Yeah. I just noticed, so a lot of my clientele is kind of a Christian community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that people really talked harshly to themselves. They would beat themselves up, and that doesn't help you, right? When you speak so harshly to yourself. So I just thought, why are they, why are they so mean to themselves? And what can we do to help them to break out of that and to be able to do better in their lives instead of feeling so much shame or guilt about themselves? Yeah.
And it can even be very simple things. Like a quick example is I went to dinner with my book club. We've been friends for years and years, and a beautiful book club member. She has amazing skin. She's older than me, and she's beautiful. And I told her that she had amazing skin, and just like, oh no, 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 just seemed like very confused why I would ever say that. And I was like, what? Yes, you do. You have amazing skin. And I think what you mean to say is, thank you.
Yeah. People have a hard time accepting compliments. And when they have been so harsh on themselves, it really takes a big act, a big leap for them to be able to accept any sort of compliment and even admit, right, that I am very beautiful, or I do this very well, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that was just a small area, but then you do, just like you said, apply it to something like even deeper, like you're kind, you're whatever it is. It's so hard for us to be gentle with ourselves. So I'm glad we're speaking about this today. But I'm wondering if you can share any challenges that clients face when they're trying to practice that self-compassion and how you particularly help them overcome these obstacles.
Yeah, this is a tough one for people to grasp. And it's interesting when I teach about self-compassion and then I give them the steps and we kind of work through it a little bit, but it is such a challenge for them to just allow themselves to give themselves permission to be kind to themselves. They haven't done that in their lives. People are 40, 50, 60, right? And they've been doing this their whole lives of being so rude and mean to themselves. And to give themselves permission to even try that is hard. And, like speaking maybe to your audience, like you think you don't need this, right? You think that you need to be hard on yourself because that's motivating. And kind of in our culture, we've been taught that that's the way to motivate, that you'll do better by being, hard and get right up from your bootstraps, right? But you really don't. And your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings guide your behavior, right? If you go back to cognitive behavioral therapy, that there's that triangle. Right? That your thoughts influence your feelings and your feelings influence how you behave. So if you're feeling horrible about yourself, what will your behavior most likely reflect? How does kicking yourself and saying awful things to yourself truly enable you to do better? So I love bringing it up that way to try and help them see that maybe this could be beneficial, but then also because I do see a lot of the Christian community, I tend to bring in Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. Those who love Jesus and his teachings, I'm like, hey, what did he say are the first two great commandments? The first one is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength, right? The second is like unto it. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And they get the love God. They're like, yeah, love God. And the second is like unto it. And we talk about, though, that we love our neighbors, but we forget that part that he says, love thy neighbor as thyself. And that part to me says, wait a second, doesn't that mean that loving yourself precedes loving your neighbor? That really you have to know how to love yourself in order for you to love your neighbor well. And when Jesus said that you need to love God, but the second is like unto it, doesn't that mean that it's pretty close up there to loving God, that loving yourself and loving your neighbor are also just as important? So we forget that part a lot. So I love bringing that up. And then another obstacle that I tend to see is that it just takes practice, right? We've been doing this for so long. We've been talking to ourselves in a really horrible way for so long, but it's just changing a habit. And our brains really like the easy way out. And the easy way is talking mean to ourselves, but that does take a toll on us. And a lot of times people come to therapy saying, I want to change, I want to do better. And it's just really creating a neural pathway in your brain that is just a baby neural pathway. And it takes a lot of effort to make that neural pathway bigger. And so it's a new way of thinking and being. So those are kind of the obstacles that I've seen.
There's a reason we're friends, Denise, because all of these things that you're speaking to, like I definitely speak to quite a bit, especially neural pathways and that practice and just that one step forward. I love how you're applying this to self-compassion, because it does take years of unlearning. Like, how long have we talked to ourselves in this way? Like such a bully in a sense, or even just like a snooty neighbor or whoever it might be how we're talking to ourselves. But I especially appreciate how you talked about loving your neighbor as yourself. And that is something that I don't think I've looked at in quite that way before. Like even potentially what you're saying, if I'm understanding, before your neighbor, so that you can love them more fully and deeply. I think there's so many layers to that. You could really teach for an hour on just that alone.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Because the as thyself, doesn't that sound like it really is before the neighbor, right? If you're going to love your neighbor like yourself, you have to love yourself first, I think.
And you think about like with kids, I always apply it back to having children. It's so much easier to be a good parent when you are healing. You've done your inner work, and then you're able to be a better parent. But if you completely neglect yourself before and just focus on parenting, you're missing the mark often. And yeah, I think the work begins with us, and then we're able to be more effective parents and friends and neighbors.
Yes, absolutely. Completely agree. Yeah. And another thing I see, I just thought of as you were talking, was people will start working on this self-compassion, but then they mess up and then they go back to beating themselves up again, right? Because they didn't do it. I'm like, no, 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 no. Building neural pathways, right? You're going to take 2 steps back. That's okay. That's part of the learning and growth experience. So expect yourself to not get it at first. You might do well, thinking about it. It's at the front of your brain. You're doing well with it. And then you forget for a little bit. And then if you go back to the cycle of beating yourself up, that's not helpful or motivating again, right? So just remember to give yourself grace and be compassionate about being a human, about, okay, habits take a long time to create, and it's one step at a time. That's what you want to see, just a little progress at a time.
Oh, I love that. That's such wonderful advice. So another question I had for you is, can you share any success stories or examples of maybe clients who have had a lot of progress in developing self-compassion that you've worked with?
Yeah, I've seen clients shift their whole paradigm. And since they're not wasting their time beating themselves up so much anymore, they have more time to truly make changes in their lives and in their relationships. And I have one client who made really drastic changes to the way she viewed herself. And it's just beautiful to see the way she can now confront herself more fully, right? And more honestly, because she believes in her humanity. She knows that God has created this plan where she makes mistakes and she learns from them. So that's been really a big change for herself. So she doesn't beat herself up and beat herself to a pulp. I like to say that. That's like my favorite term. Don't beat yourself up to a pulp anymore. So she has more love and more goodness to give to herself and those around her. She's not wasting that time.
That is beautiful. I was actually just talking to, who was it? Oh, I think just a friend yesterday. That's one of my favorite parts about being a therapist or counselor, is the privilege it is to see that accelerated growth in a short amount of time. And when they start to believe in themselves and have that self-compassion, it's just transformational. And you get to witness that as a counselor. It's such a beautiful thing.
It's very fulfilling. Brings a lot of fulfillment.
I see what you did there. I like that. I love that. So I'm wondering if you can share some practical tips or tools with our listeners on how you can help clients develop that greater self-compassion.
Yeah, yes, 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 I do. This is like my favorite part. Okay. And so are you willing to kind of do it with me? Are you,
Sure, yeah.
okay. All right. So I love to do the best friend exercise. And
Okay.
I'm sure some people have heard this before, but so Kendra, I want you to think of a friend that you adore, right? Maybe one of your best friends, someone that you just admire and love. And this friend has made a pretty grievous mistake.
Mhm.
Okay. And she's devastated. I'm assuming it's a she, I guess. She's devastated, right? And just feeling really horrible about it. And she just feels so much shame and she really needs you and wants to talk to you about it. So I want you to think about that. And I always ask people 3 questions. So how do you feel about your friend? What will you say to your friend? And how will you say it to your friend? So those 3 things. So for you then, Kendra, like, how do you feel about this friend if you have a friend in mind?
Oh, I love this friend. She's a
Okay.
beautiful human.
Good. Okay. So you love this friend. Even though she's made a mistake, you still love
Mhm.
her, right? It hasn't changed.
Oh, very deeply, yes.
Okay. Very deeply. What would you say to this friend?
I would say it's okay. You are remarkable. You're going to get through this. And we all make mistakes. That's part of the human experience. And this does not define who you are. And it's okay. Like, I would just be there in that hole with them, recognizing, like, this is what we're all going through in some way. And it doesn't change how I feel about you or how much I love you.
Yeah. So you just feel like the same about her. You're like, it's okay. You're a great person. You're amazing. You're going to get through this, right? I'm here for you, right? All those kind of things. That's wonderful. Okay. And then how would you say that to her? Like what volume do you use? What tone of
Yeah.
voice?
Yeah. Again, I'm thinking of Brene Brown down in that hole, that little video. Just low and slow. I talk quietly. I would be loving and affectionate, even physically that way, and just tender, showing that great tenderness and compassion and love for her as I talked.
Okay. So low and slow and tender and kind.
Hmm.
Good words there. Okay. So let's then flip the script a little bit and let's say that you made a really horrible mistake, right? You did something that you are ashamed about and are so upset about it. Let's ask those same 3 questions about yourself. So how do you feel about yourself? What do you say to yourself? And how do you say it to yourself?
Well, I'm not going to lie here. I'm not perfect either. I know you might think otherwise, Denise, but when it's a big mistake, yeah, there is some level of beating myself up. Like, I know better. I should know better. I'm a therapist. I've learned this lesson before. I can't believe I did this. I feel disappointed in myself. I feel shame. I feel sadness and often some depression.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah, right. So some shame, some disappointment, all of that you're feeling towards yourself. And then and what would you say? You did say a few things already, but what would you say to yourself if you made this huge mistake? What would be your self-talk?
I think something around that, like, I should know better. I've been through this before. Or even like as a leader, like people are looking up to me, like, I can't believe I did something like this. Or what are those that look up to me going to think? Like, I try not to think about those things often, but they'll sneak in when you're at your lowest. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean? So yeah, probably those things.
Yeah. So how could you do this? People are looking up to you. Can't believe I did this. I'm so embarrassed, right? Those kind of things. And then how would you say that to yourself in the moment?
Well, mentally, it would be kind of like a angry, frustrated, not a lot of compassion, and more of a like critical kind of voice that is probably a little parental, shaming and disappointed voice. Yeah.
And you were saying low and slow before. Would it be low and slow?
It wouldn't be slow. I'm trying to think, like, I've never put a volume to it, but
Yeah.
I just picture like this squinted eye parent kind of like tilting their head and like, what are you doing? You know,
Uh-huh.
like
Yes.
probably not low and slow and soft. It would be more of a elevated, critical voice,
Harsh and critical. Okay, good.
a
All
little
right. So
louder.
interesting to take those 2 different frames, right? The frame of your friend that you adore and kind of how you felt about her, how you said things to her, what you said to her, and how you felt about yourself. what you were saying to yourself and how you said it to yourself? What are the differences that you see there?
They're definitely not the same person. Going back to, you said your demographic is generally Christian. Mine is as well, not always, but often. And that just reminds me of like the low and slow is like how the Savior would respond to us. Just like that compassion, that mercy, that love, that tenderness. And the other one is just more of a Satan kind of figure or an evil spirit or anybody, just the angel and devil on your shoulder kind of response.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's such a contrast, right? And we almost always tend to do that if we're not careful with our thinking and catching it, right? Because it can be really insidious and come right in there and sneak in and be like, oh, crud, I was thinking really horribly about myself. But being able to recognize those differences and why we have such differences, and then realizing, okay, who talks to me the most, or who do I talk to the most? And really, we talk to ourselves the most. We have anybody else, even our best friends, even our spouses. We talk to ourselves the most. And if we are being cruel and harsh and horrible to ourselves, we tend to not act the way that we really want to act. And so if we can practice being our own best friend, using that same frame and exercise that we just did of how would I speak to my best friend, and I really can I direct that towards myself, and that helps us in how we feel and how we behave.
Oh, I love that. Such a simple exercise, but very transformative. Like I know these things in general, but I haven't done this specific exercise, and I could see how that would be very therapeutic. And just like you said, it takes practice, so it's not just a one and done.
That's right. Yep. Lots and lots of practice. Yeah. And can I give you one more example of
Yeah,
something?
go for it.
Okay. So I like to teach people about something called fact versus judgment. And fact is looking at the details of the situation, like what do I see and what do I hear, right? That's fact. And then judgment is any sort of meaning that we're placing upon those facts. And then I'd like to sprinkle in a little bit of self-compassion in there. So I'll give kind of an example. Let's say that I had to get up early in the morning for a meeting and I set my alarm. Well, I sleep and my alarm goes off, and it goes off for about 15 minutes. And I had put, my time was pretty, I needed to be up for that. And I realized 15 minutes in that it's going off. I'm like, oh my gosh, my alarm went off. Oh, I can't believe I did that. How could I do that? I'm so stupid. I am lazy. I can't believe, people are going to think the worst of me. I'm kind of going off on myself. Okay. So if you take that situation, what are the facts of the situation?
That you didn't hear your alarm clock. I think that's what you said.
Yeah.
That you slept in, that you missed an appointment or whatever it was.
Late. Yeah. Those are the facts, right? Those are things you can see and hear. Now, what was the judgment that I placed upon myself?
That you screwed up, you missed it, you can't believe it, all of these things.
Yes. I'm stupid,
critical.
I'm lazy, right? All of those things. Okay, then I like to bring in a little bit of self-compassion. I'll say, what would Jesus say, right? Let's do some Jesus talk. And my belief is that he would come in, he'd put his arm around you, and he'd say, oh, you slept in. You must have really needed that sleep. And that's okay. Let's try this again tomorrow.
Oh, I love that. I love just, that's okay. Just that tenderness again. And I do the same thing, but I often say, like, talk to your, somebody they really love that's a child. Like, you're always going to be so tender with a child.
Yes.
But, that's beautiful. Fact versus judgment. That's another really useful tool. So listeners, remember that best friend exercise and the fact versus judgment. Thank you for sharing those, Denise.
Yeah.
I love those. Do you have any quick recommendations? Because I often get that question from clients. Like any books or apps or anything that you would recommend if people really want to take self-compassion to that next level to improve?
I follow the work of Kristen Neff, and Neff is Neff. And she has a website, selfcompassion.org. And just so you know, there's self and then there's a hyphen and then compassion.org. She's written several books. Like some of them I can mention are Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, and for Fierce Self-Compassion. And there is a self-compassion workbook that she's done, but I have the workbook by Joy Johnson. I really like that one. I'll use some of those exercises from that workbook.
Oh, nice. Okay. I actually was going to get a training from her. I haven't yet, but I still want to in the future.
Oh, you should. Let me
Yeah.
know because I would love that too.
Maybe we'll do it together.
Yeah.
I love that. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And then how do you practice what you teach and implement self-compassion?
For sure. This really has changed the way that I think about myself. It's on the daily, right? Like I think I went a good 40 years of being very critical to myself. And so I've had to do a lot of rewiring that way, but I'm so much nicer to myself. And I especially use it as a mom, right? When I'm disappointed in my behavior and the way I've handled something, I sit with myself. I always put my hand on my heart. This is always, if I'm being compassionate to myself, people will see it because I put my hand on my heart and I can validate the pain that I'm feeling. I always say ouch because I love E.T. when E.T. said ouch, right? So I always say ouch. So I hold on to that and then I normalize the tough role, right, of motherhood and being human. And I give myself some supportive self-talk. Just kind of, you know what, you're doing the best that you can. You're a good mom. You're a strong person. And just try again, right? And then I can feel a little bit more lifting to repair and to do better.
I really appreciate that. That I almost just visualizing you doing that or visualizing myself doing that with that like hand on the heart and saying ouch and normalizing and validating it. It just feels like such a tender, sweet way to handle it, and how much easier it will be to smile throughout your day instead of just feeling like verbally attacked all the time.
Yeah. And when you feel better, right? If you sat there with yourself and just realized, you know what, I'm human. It's okay. I did make this mistake or I did something that I didn't want to, but I can fix it, right? I can do better. And this is part of why I'm here to learn and grow.
That's wonderful. And last but not least, Denise, how does self-compassion tie into fulfillment for you, and how do you find personally greater fulfillment in your life?
Fulfillment. Okay.
I
Yes.
love
Your
that.
favorite topic. Yeah.
That's right.
We'll make a dance routine. So I kind of looked up like fulfillment. I'm like, okay, so that's really satisfaction from developing yourself. And so self-compassion is part of developing and refining you as a person, and it allows you to see more clearly just what you do, right? It's easier to admit your mistakes, I think, when you're okay with them, right? When you realize, okay, that's all right, and I want to do better. So you can experience, I believe, more joy and happiness with that. And how do I find fulfillment, right? So since we're talking about fulfillment, I love balancing body, mind, spirit, social, and service. Like those are my 5 things for me. If I'm doing things out of those 5 things, I feel more balanced and I feel like, okay, I'm making progress. And there is so much power. And I hope people hear this. There's so much power in acceptance of yourself and working to better myself all at the same time. They're not exclusive. You can do them both. So self-acceptance, right? And working to better myself at the same time.
Oh, that is wonderful. Self-acceptance and progress. And I really do find myself talking about those two things so much more too. And because we see acceptance in this way, that means like, oh, then I'm okay with all these faults and I'll just like not be motivated to change. And that's not at all what it is. I think you're kind of alluding to that, but progress is so key in that, like, once we can have more acceptance, self-compassion, and validation, that's when we really start to progress in our lives.
Absolutely. Amen, sister.
I love that. Thank you so much for speaking to all of that. That was so helpful and just breaking it down on simple ways that we can improve in self-compassion. I'm going to go over a couple of those things you said very quickly. You said just having an awareness and validating your feelings, normalizing your experience, and giving yourself that supportive self-talk. Also, loving your neighbor as yourself, but also begin with yourself so that you can more fully love your neighbor, your family members. And then keep in mind those 2 tools that Denise gave us, the best friend exercise and fact versus judgment, because self-acceptance and progress are really so complementary. Thank you for sharing that. Any final words before we end today, Denise?
I just hope people will feel something from this, like they see the power in self-compassion and acceptance and progress and all those things. You can hold it all in your hands, right? And work on it.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you again so much. And if people want to find you, or maybe they're even in Idaho and they want a counselor, how can they find you, Denise?
Yeah, they can reach me at Denise Winkel Counseling at gmail.com. So they can email me that way. And Winkel, I'll have to say this, is Winkel.
Yes, I always get that
People,
wrong myself.
yeah, so I always have to spell it, which is totally fine. I get it. And you can find me on Psychology Today if you look up Denise Winkel. And then Facebook, you can look up Denise Winkel Counseling as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you again for speaking on self-compassion, which we will probably need regular reminders. So maybe we won't just have you back for just couples, but maybe a refresher in the future. So
that would be awesome.
I appreciate it. You take care, Denise.
Thank you.
Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.